In this age of an increasing number of teams hardly playing their starters at all in the preseason, I selfishly, as a fan, got really excited when I saw DeMeco Ryans say this today.
Ones go out and get reps this week versus Pittsburgh.
Ones versus Pittsburgh, 2024 Houston Texans offense with the added Stephon Diggs, a defense that features Danielle Hunter along with Al Shire. I don't know about DeMeco Autry and others will be unveiled this Friday night versus Pittsburgh. So I'm excited about that. The Steelers usually play at least one game with their starters, and with their offense having a quarterback competition between Simmons and Russell Wilson, I'm wondering if they just get that started early. Sometimes the Steelers starters will play two games, and as people try to compare DeMeco Ryans to various other coaches, Mike Tomlin's name comes out. Personally, I think he's somewhere. I think DeMeco's somewhere between Mike Tomlin and Pete Carroll. So, like on the goofy scale, you've got Pete Carroll up here and Mike Tomlin way down here. DeMeco is fun-loving but not goofy, and I think smiles a lot more than Mike Tomlin. So somewhere in the middle. But he's got the positivity of a Pete Carroll, and but like the hard-nosed sentimentality. Sentimentality is not the right word. Hard-nosed attitude of a Mike Tomlin. Whatever. I'm just happy that we're going to get to see this offense finally. I'm happy that we're going to get to see Juice Scruggs and Kenyon Green, and probably not Laramie Tunsil, but those guys blocking for the actual starters. No Joe Mixon at practice today. That's neither here nor there. Here's DeMeco finishing up his thoughts on why he thinks it's important for starters to play.
I truly believe that a guy needs to get reps in a preseason game, right? We don't go to the ground, as you see, the way we practice. We try to keep guys up and be as safe as possible in practice. I think everybody needs that opportunity to go to the ground a couple times in the game to just get up, dust yourself off, and know you're good, right? And I'm okay. Like, I can't go to the ground and get up. So you just have to go through and play live reps of football before live action comes in September. So you'll see our ones go out and get reps this week versus Pittsburgh.
I think there's two things. One is everything DeMeco said about, hey, obviously guys know they're going to be okay when they go to the ground, but there's like a physical toughening. Like where it's kind of, you get to that point when we used to go places when I was a player. I'm a nose tackle. I'm getting, combo blocked all the time. You take a lot of physical abuse. I was almost literally a bull in a china shop. There were times we were at a sushi restaurant once and somebody called my name and I turned to look and I knocked a whole plate off the counter and didn't even know it. I would just bump into things and break things because my body was physically tough. Now I'm soft. Now I'm a gentleman. I have intellectual pursuits. The other thing is just getting in game shape. There's no amount of practice that gets you in game shape. DeMeco does a good job of practicing a lot of situational football, and because of that, you get multiple reps in a series sometimes. But there's really nothing like honestly, my ideal final topping off my football conditioning would be getting like a 10 or 12 play series in a preseason game, ideally. And, if things are going really well, you might not get that. But there's just nothing like the feeling of having gone 12 plays and trying to make a goal line stand and your legs, not being able to feel your legs as you're running. It's hard to get that. It's hard to push yourself to that place in practice. So for a lot of reasons, I'm glad that they're playing some. Obviously, you don't want to bash them all to hell before the season begins. But there's also a timing element. And I think some of that is perhaps the reason that DeMeco is about to say what he's going to say, as well as what people observing today, Cody Stutes and others observed about this practice today.
Just execution was higher today on both sides of the football. And to see our guys compete, right? Guys be sticky in coverage, see the offense still make plays. That's what I want to see. I want to see a competitive team, and that's what you saw today. And it's always fun to see our offense making big plays.
Yeah, and it's good when the offense is making plays, but it's on contested balls. So it's not like guys are uncovered like they were on Thursday night at times. So hopefully maybe they clean some of that stuff up with the second and third team, but also with the starters. As far as the audio being off, it is a good hat that DeMeco's wearing. It's probably because I'm moving around too much. So let's give it a little bit of time. We know we've had our issues in the past. But this, like, man, this is why I shudder when I think about some of these teams that don't play any of their starters, because there's so much timing and reaction and all of that you just don't get from practice. And then especially, and this is why I imagine the Steelers might have their starters play a couple games, because they're trying to get this timing down with two different quarterbacks and a new offensive coordinator. It's not so simple. And Arthur Smith's scheme is a departure from what Pittsburgh traditionally does. So I'll be surprised if we don't get to see some of the Steelers starters on Friday night. This is DeMeco. For those of you who don't know, they are up in Ohio. They're actually practicing at Nick Casario's old high school, the university school. It's a all-boys preparatory school on 100 acres. It looks absolutely beautiful. And they're practicing there. It's a nice wooded environment, but staying in Cleveland and before they go off to play Pittsburgh. So this is DeMeco on the value of getting away for a week like this during camp.
Yeah, getting away for a week in camp, the most important thing about it is you see guys communicate more. You see guys just hanging out more in the meal rooms, just talking, playing video games together. So that's that's what you want as a coach. You want to see your team grow a tighter bond.
I switched up the audio.
When you're on the road.
No, hold on a second, everybody. We've done so well for so long. The camera is correct. The speaker needs to be my headphones. The mic is, I've got the mic set on my camera. There you go. Okay. That should be better, everybody. Apologies to everybody. That should be better. Back to DeMeco. I apologize, DeMeco. I cut you off. Let me back you up a little bit.
That's that's what you want as a coach. You want to see your team grow a tighter bond when you're on the road for a week. And that's what our guys are doing. And I'm excited. That's what I'm probably most excited about, is seeing our guys just become tighter as a team. And the tighter we are, I always speak this, the tighter you are as a team, the better your team is, the farther you can go as a team when you have that tight bond.
It's like us in this community where we all know that Seth needs a little help and feedback with the audio to avoid feedback on the audio. So thank you for that, whoever it was that had told me. I think it was Daniel. Thank you very much. As far as the actually getting away for a week, this is one of the things about training camp that a lot of teams have gone to, especially like letting veterans sleep at home during camp. And when Gary Kubiak came in and did that, it was cool. Like, I enjoy being with my wife and everything, but you do miss out on that camaraderie and just that feeling of just, being all pushed together and getting to know guys that you might not normally get to know, and all being in it together. I think these training camps aren't as physically grueling as they used to be, which is good. I'm not whining about how awesome it was in the old days, but I like sometimes it's almost impossible to get that kind of commitment or shared suffering that forces people together the way you do even like in high school 2-a-days or 3-a-days. Some of those psychotic high school football coaches have some pretty damn close teams because they go all Bear Bryant on them, and guys get super tight because of it. But this is about the closest you can get, is being off somewhere in Cleveland. If you wanna forge bonds, you gotta go to Cleveland. And we'll get to John Metchie later, because I know a lot of you had questions about John Metchie and his relative quietude during Thursday's game. We need to monitor this situation. No more Scuffle gates. There apparently will be no more Scuffle gates because Aziz Alshire is there to break them up.
Diggs and Petrie had a nice little trash talking session, and then he went over to Petrie just to calm him down. It's good to see that type of leadership.
That's awesome. That's why now I can step away and I can move on to the next part of practice, because I know our guys are so competitive, but it's also respectful. Right, with Petrie, Diggs, Aziz, like, it's all respect. Guys are really, they're sharpening each other. Like, guys are really competing, giving their ultimately their best. And now Diggs is making Petrie better. Petrie is making Diggs better. And Aziz is there to calm everybody down. So it's really fun to see.
Yeah, and like finding that balance where you're competitive but not letting it overflow, blah, 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 blah. I don't know. I feel like Mike Tomlin's still pretty old school with some of that. I saw a clip of him earlier where a couple guys were about to get into it, and it looked like Tomlin had a like sadistic look of joy on his face when he saw that. I know Tomlin wants guys to. Boy, if you ever get a chance, just Google Ryan Clark describing the most violent day of training camp he ever had. He talked about it on the Pivot a few days ago, and it was it was fascinating. Those old that might have been, that Steelers defense when Ryan Clark was on it, and James Harrison and all those guys. That was something different. Cade Stover, who did some good things in the game.
Cade has been the guy we saw on tape in Ohio, just tough, right? Making tough competitive catches, right? Finishing strong with the football, like the couple plays he made in the game, last Thursday. It's cool to see a guy, like, you see him in practice, but you never quite know how they're going to respond when they get in the game. But it was cool to see Cade just be who Cade has been. Tough, physical, competitive, finishing, like loving football. That's the Cade I knew and I grew to love watching him at Ohio State. And that's the guy who showed up in the Hall of Fame game.
And I think I saw some signs for optimism. There's some signs that we could get some optimism from on the blocking front. He's not perfect, but he's only been playing the position for 2 years. And remember, I'll go back to George Kittle, went to tight end factory at Iowa, and it took him a couple of years in college before it kind of clicked for him with the blocking. It's not like George Kittle wasn't tough before that or anything, but everything just kind of clicked for him. And realistically right now, Cade is your best option and your best hope to have a genuinely good blocking tight end. So he's not there yet because he's still learning, but I think he's making progress. And then having that live action and getting time to kind of use the technique he's learning against live action where guys are actually trying to tackle and it's full speed, I think he'll get a lot better. Just like this happens. Your first preseason game and then especially your first regular season game, I've always felt like those are the two biggest leaps you ever take in football. From high school to college, the difference isn't that big depending on where you went to school. But even then, like usually you're more physically dominant. If you're a guy that goes on to play in the NFL, you're more physically dominant than a lot of the guys you're playing against in college. You get to the NFL and that first snap of live action in the preseason, it's versus a lot of backups, but they're veteran backups. And then you get to the regular season. And from that first game to the second game, it's night and day. At least it was for me, and I think a lot of other guys. So I'm excited about Cade. Plus, he's got incredible word of mouth from the people at Ohio State, and we have had luck as of late with guys with good word of mouth from Ohio State. We've also had good luck with guys who have good word of mouth from C.J. Stroud himself. Tank Dell has worked out pretty well so far. And Cade Stover, they describe each other as like long-lost brothers. Okay. There's a Blake Fisher in here somewhere. I know. This next one might be Blake Fisher.
Yeah, overall from the game, I'm pleased with what Blake
It's Blake
did in the game. I think he held his own. Again, like everyone is not 100%. It was things to clean up just with pad leverage, just getting Blake to do a better job of bending, right? But he has the length, he has the tools, right, to play on the left side or right side, as we've seen. And I know he's benefited from being able to get a ton of reps over at the left side, and I think it'll help us as a team.
Yeah, and somebody asked a good follow-up here. I don't know if you can hear it now, but basically says it's good that he gets to go up against Will Anderson and Daniil Hunter.
You got accelerated on the job training going up against Daniil.
Going against Daniil and Will will definitely speed it up for you. So the young rookie has had to learn pretty fast, and it's only made him better. And also he's had a lot of good reps versus Daniil and Will. So he's held his own. So it hasn't just been totally one-sided as those guys have competed. So Blake has gotten better, but also Daniil and Will has gotten better from going against Blake and Titus as well.
Hey, good job, Blake. You get a break. You get to go against TJ Watt now. So, but it won't be as big a shock going against those Steelers pass rushers as it would have been if he had never faced the two guys for the Texans, as well as DeMeco Autry and everybody else. So, everything that DeMeco said, I think is what we've seen. It's that he 100% has the athleticism. I think he has the technique. he's a tall, relatively lanky guy who's got an appetite for violence, but he just needs to learn how to play with a little bit better leverage. And this happens sometimes. Offensive tackles, sometimes they figure it out over the course of a training camp. Sometimes it takes a full year, but you learn how it is to anchor against full-grown men, and you figure it out. So hopefully seeing some game action, and I hope he does get to see TJ Watt. TJ plays mostly on the left side. I've always messed his name up. Ogunjobi, the other guy over on the right side. Oh no, and then also let's see. Oh, there's a kid from my wife's hometown. I forgot, Cole Holcomb, the linebacker for the Steelers, who I like. Oh, and Highsmith. Damn it, Highsmith. I'm making the mistake of looking at the depth chart on a 3-4 defense. Highsmith. So yeah, it'll be a good challenge for him. Really good challenge for him if those guys play. Okay. Do we get to John Metchie now? All right. John Metchie. It's complicated. I did a whole video on John Metchie, talking to him up last week, because the first couple of weeks of camp, I thought he looked like a different athlete. I thought he looked more explosive. I thought he looked more aggressive getting in and out of his breaks. I thought he'd improved. A lot of that, really honestly, is based on one-on-ones and 7-on-7. The one-on-ones especially, I feel a little bit guilty about, because I'm also the first person to tell people not to read too much into one-on-ones, at least as far as who won or lost the battle. But I felt like he just looked physically better in the one-on-ones, whether he won a matchup or not. He got into the game, and they didn't go to him much at all. And at first I thought, all right, well, perhaps the game plan, what have you. Just as a refresher, here's John Metchie just a few times from practice. Here we go. So remember, got Kalen Bullock that one time, real hardcore. There's another one-on-one versus Stingley. Just nice little cut there. And then you don't get to see him until the end of this next snap, but he'd had a really good connection with Davis Mills. Davis Mills and him had connected during camp at times, and there you see John Metchie running free. But you get into a game situation, and for one, you don't always see as advantageous matchups, because in practice you're going against a defense that sometimes isn't necessarily game planning for whatever you're specifically doing. And it's not like the Bears had a super hardcore game plan, but there's a lot more traffic that you're not used to seeing. And I'll just let DeMeco answer the question that he got in Friday's press conference, with an overlay of some of John Metchie's snaps, routes from the game. I don't have access to the All-22 for the preseason, so this is kind of shoddy video, but just you get a sense for the difference between John Metchie in practice versus John Metchie in the game.
And Metchie, he showed up during camp just playing really fast, playing decisive, and we've seen that during the first couple of weeks of camp. Just want to continue to see that, in the game. Where the game was yesterday, we'll see how he improves to the next week. And that's a lot of guys, man. It's that first one out. It's all about, okay, this is your starting point. So I don't put a lot into the game. I just put a lot into how guys respond the next time, right? After we make the corrections, we show guys where they have to improve, whether it's, a D-line position, receiver, every position across the board. It's like, how can guys improve upon what they put out there on film on yesterday? So I'm excited to look ahead to this next week and to see how all of our guys improve.
So, I mean, if you can look at it without even hyper analyzing it, you don't see the same level of speed. It's not as crisp. There's almost a little bit of uncertainty. And the word that came up in what DeMeco just said, and something that John Metchie himself has said in the first couple of weeks of camp, and I think DeMeco's described the same thing that we all saw, which was in the first couple of weeks, looked like a guy might be a different guy, got in the game, and some of that flash went away. So he's got time now. You have an extra preseason game. He's got a couple of weeks now to maybe let that click. But like Xavier Hutchinson and how he fits in and understands the offense compared to Metchie at this point, it's just night and day. So I've already told Cody Stutes that so far Cody Stutes has by far won the battle, because he he was not as bullish on John Metchie as I was. I still think there's a lot of upside there, and that it is still a guy that is coming off of 2 years where he was very physically taxed and not necessarily really learning all the finer parts of exactly how to play in this offense. So we'll see, but it's, that's about as critical as DeMeco will get, in just acknowledging that there's improvement and that there wasn't, the game didn't look like some of the reps in practice had. A couple guys who did actually really show up when the lights came on, and maybe when they were able to go against backups instead of starters, but I give them credit because they looked a lot better, were Scruggs and Kenyon Green. One more of John Metchie, just because I'm a jerk, I guess.
Yeah, I really liked Kenyon and Juice. It's up front. Really liked the way that they played in a snap. I think they both had probably over 20 snaps, but I thought they did a really nice job of going out and showing, who they can be. Still a lot to improve on, but I like the aggressiveness from Kenyon, like how he got up to the second level. I like the way they were finishing blocks. So it's definitely a big step in the right direction for both guys when it comes to, continue to improve our front. And we know how important the front is, right, to be able to run the football, also the protection aspect of it. So I thought both of those guys did a really nice job.
Yeah, and I thought so. I thought the most encouraging thing about Scruggs and Kenyon Green, and on a few of the run plays, Blake Fisher, like Blake Fisher, I think he did some good things in the zone running, was that you could tell when it was the running back who was at fault. We've come off of several years now of basically saying, well, I think a better running back could have gone through that little minuscule crease that was there for a second. There were times in that game where runs could have been more explosive, but guys didn't hit the lanes or read the blocking in front of them as well as they could have, as well as like an Arian Foster would have, or frankly a Joe Mixon. Dameon Pierce, hopefully we'll get to see. I don't think we'll see Joe Mixon on Friday, but we might get to see some Dameon Pierce. That's encouraging, and it was versus backups, but I think, as evidenced by DeMeco saying that practice was a lot crisper yesterday, I think Scruggs and Kenyon Green really, really could use and did use that live game experience. And when you're, I didn't want to make excuses for the offensive line. It is hard those first couple weeks of camp when you're not going to the ground and you're trying to take care of each other. It's hard to really get the blocking down just right without going and getting some live action. So it's a good sign. Now, is it going to look exactly the same versus the Steelers starters? Is it going to look the same versus the Quinnen Williams of the world and everything? We don't know, but that was better than I was hoping for and anticipating. So I'm going to take that little victory right now, and hopefully they can build on that. You guys had some good questions. I saw one about Brevin Jordan. I would be really, really surprised if they cut Brevin Jordan, because for one, DeMeco Ryans just gushes about him, unprovoked and unprompted. He'll say some really nice things about Brevin Jordan, and he's a great rhythm changer in all the different ways you can use him. So I would be surprised. Somebody had asked about Andrew Beck. It really depends on his health for one. Hairston played fullback in that game. They've got Beck listed as the starter on the unofficial depth chart, so I don't know if I would read into that, but Beck is a guy that, as a converted tight end, was still learning how to play the position last year. I thought Troy Hairston 2 years ago did some really good things, but also was looking like he was still trying to learn the position. So it's a competition between those two. I don't know. I don't know if does it come down to special teams with those guys? Which I did a video on the kickoff return. The kickoff return is disgusting. They're going to get rid of that. It's an accident waiting to happen. They already lost Jake Hansen to, I guess it was a concussion. He got dinged up on that play where he made a tackle, because every single collision in that game was done at awkward body angles. It was a train wreck. It was a car crash on an icy road every single time. Nobody could get in control. And you could say, all right, well, it's first time, everybody's getting used to it. All right, I don't know, man. There's a lot going on that play. They're either going to have to tweak it or get rid of it. It sounds like DeMeco in the way he described it, I wouldn't be surprised if the Texans just kick it into the end zone every time this next week. I don't think and DeMeco loves big hits, but he doesn't like big stupid hits that happen just by random chance and not just by playing football properly. Really do miss Foster running the ball. So majestic. The safety position concerns me. Patrick Storm, I'm trying to figure this out. Patrick Storm, who is a Texans fan and blogger and prolific on social media, apparently he had tweeted out that there was a conversation with Justin Systems, and Patrick's been right about a conversation with Justin Simmons. And Patrick's been right about stuff in the past, so I don't know exactly what the report is. I didn't see it on Patrick's Twitter right before I came on. But if I'd be surprised if the Texans haven't had conversations about Justin Simmons. I also think that Justin Simmons knows that his value increases every time another safety gets injured. He's by far the best safety out there that available, and there's going to be some team whose starting safety goes down during training camp, and his value is going to keep going up. So I wouldn't be surprised if they've actually had talks. Again, I don't know what Patrick reported. If one of you guys could say, just like he saved me on the audio issues after 6 minutes. Want to see Lassiter? I want to see Lassiter. Let me show you real quick. Let's look at the Pittsburgh Steelers depth chart. So aside from me remembering freaking Highsmith, who's a very good football player. All right, let's see. Let me expand this for you guys. If we look at the offense, Russell Wilson, nominally the starter over Justin Fields. I want to see Justin Fields. I'm just with or without the Texans, I'm curious about Justin Fields in this offense. Russell Wilson, I'm skeptical of him in the Arthur Smith offense just because Arthur Smith loves to set up stuff over the middle, and that's not necessarily Russell Wilson's strong suit. I would say, George Pickens, Van Jefferson, Roman Wilson versus Lassiter. I'm intrigued by that. And then if we go down the hit list there, I'd love to see their interior defensive line in general versus the Texans' interior line, where according to Cody Stutz today, he said Kurt Heinisch and maybe it was Khalil Davis or another defensive tackle were kind of having their way on the interior. I'm guessing that they were playing with the second team, unless Mario Edwards and Foley Fatukasi were having a day off. So I'm not overly worried about that unless it was against the starters. TJ Watt, hell yes. Patrick Queen there now. Alex Highsmith, please. Yes, let me see those two guys going first as the two offensive tackles. I would love that. So some good potential matchups. Steelers have newer offensive linemen than we do. Yeah, there's like Arthur Smith's got some work to do over on that side of the ball. It's interesting. It's super interesting. You got to remember, Arthur Smith, before he went to Atlanta, was the architect of some damn scary Titans offenses. It helped that they had A.J. Brown, obviously, and they helped that they had Derrick Henry. But I do think he knows what he's doing as an offensive coordinator. It's just that I think he's one of those guys that maybe he's just not cut out to be a head coach. He never struck me as having the personality of a head coach, and sometimes also, his reticence to use his young running back and other things. Sometimes it's good if you got a head coach telling him like, "Hey man," you're telling an offensive coordinator, "Hey man, you're being kind of stubborn here. Like, why don't we use the young fella?" So he might be better off as an offensive coordinator. So I'm intrigued, very, very intrigued by this matchup. I'm going to cut it off, try to keep this less than a half hour. Might try to do another one a little bit later. And I know I definitely want to get to just getting ready for the Steelers game. I know it's Tuesday in the preseason, but it's the freaking Steelers. It's the Steelers, a team that is CJ came out and kind of, it was one of those games where some things emerged for CJ last year. So as much as preseason games don't matter, I feel like Mike Tomlin and the Steelers ethos in general are very old school, and that if there's somebody with a different uniform on across the field from you, you're going to treat it like a regular season game. So very excited about this. Thanks, everybody.